Hello, everyone. So we are gonna explore the equation of the circle by using Pythagorean in this problem. So we are given the circle at center at 9, comma 5, and then that has a radius of 3. And then we were given a triangle by connecting the center of the circle and a point on the circle and making some horizontal and vertical lines, okay? Which is a common approach. And the first thing we want to find is the radius. It's obvious. It's given right here as 3 units. So let's go ahead and write that. And the center is, the x coordinate is 9 and the y is 5, which we already said a few seconds ago. So that would be 5, 9, 5. And the value of a, so like we don't really know the value of a. Before I kind of click this, if I like to go ahead. The X right here, but if you were to if you were given this right at 11, maybe it has to be right there. If this point was 11, so because it's right there, so you could just say, okay, that was 11. But if that was maybe at 12, so 12 is right there. So the X is close to 11, but it's not exactly 11. But if this was 11, you could just say the the x coordinates was 11, for example, and then the x coordinates out the center was 9. So you could just get this distance by taking their difference, because if this was 11, so you can just subtract 9 to get that distance. But it wasn't clearly 11 for sure. It's close, but not. But if I want to extend this all the way to the here, so my x coordinate of this point is going to be the same as the value right here. And the same idea if I want to continue this as well. So that will be my y value. We are trying to make it general. That's why it's not given exactly. So whatever x right here is going to be somewhere right there. And then the y is going to be right there. So if this is x, and then the x coordinates of the center was 9. So the a is actually the distance between these two x coordinate. So since we don't really know the exact value of the x, we know this one, so we can see this distance is just the x minus 9, because the distance from origin to 9 is 9, and then distance from origin to this x is x unit. Whatever that x is 11 point something, but that will give us just x units. So if you subtract 9, so you will get that red region and that red distance, which is the same as a. So now let's look at the option. So I do expect to see something says x minus 9. So let's see. We do have x minus 9 as option. As you see, there are too many options. The reason why it has to be x minus 9, because x is the x coordinates of the point that is larger, which is something 11 point something. And the 9 is the x coordinates of the center. So when you look at their distance, that is x minus 9. And similarly, I want you to try yourself to get the y like b, so which is basically this distance. So if you look at the y value of the center, so that was 5, and then the y value of y is something right there, right? So I'm gonna change the color. So, and the b is the same as this distance, which is the difference between the y value and 5. So you do expect to get this as y minus 5. So let's see the option. So we have y minus 5. Okay. So now we do have kind of a triangle. So let me draw this slightly bigger. If I do them, right? So you do have, this is b, but I do know this was the y minus 5. And then this is a, which we already know that's x minus 9. So it's kind of too many variable. That's, I guess, okay. And this is 3. So now we were asked to use the Pythagorean. If you use the Pythagorean, this is, I can take as a fifth square. So you will get x minus 9, which is your a to the second power. And then b is y minus 5 to the second power. and this is equal to square of the hypotenuse, which is going to be 3 squared. And this is just the Pythagorean, nothing really fancy. So x minus 9 to the second power, and then y minus 5 to the second power, and 3 to the second power. And we got the equation of the circle. So I hope that makes sense. So we'll do some concrete examples. Okay, so let's do another one of these, and then to make it in general. So the center is given 7 and 6, right? So let's go ahead and start with that, 7, 6. And the radius, as before, is just 3. So I'll get that. And then A was the difference between the x coordinate, which is x, and the x coordinate of P, which is 7. So x minus 7. So that looks like the choice this. And the distance B is the difference between the y and the y coordinates of the center. So which is 6. And then the y is something like close to 8, but it's not exactly. So that's going to be y minus 6. So let's see if that's the case. And if I use the Pythagorean as before, so you will get x minus 7 squared and y minus 6. But please make sure you really get x minus 7 and y minus 6 before you really move on, because this is going to tell us the equation driving approach, and that's 3 squared. And we got the equation. But here's the like slightly challenging question that I like to make it in general question. So let's say we don't really know. I'm gonna clean the numbers. So let's say we do not know these numbers. Okay, even though it's kind of obvious because we've seen it and they are given in an like equal distance from each other. So let's assume that center point wasn't given. So let's say this is just like something h comma k. We use h and k usually, and then the radius, let's say this is r, okay? If I use the same reasoning, the center is not gonna be now exactly this location, even though it's the case, but if I don't really know their values, okay, if this is given in general, you can say the center is the h comma k, right? So I'm gonna say hk, and the radius will be just r, so I'm gonna say this is r unit. And the value of A is the same as difference between the x coordinate and x coordinate. So that will give us x minus h. So the h is the x coordinates of the center. And the same idea for the B is going to be y minus k. This is going to be the value of B in this question. If I just change this one to those, so you will get x minus h squared and then y minus k to the second power is equal to r squared. And then this is called equation of the circle. And we just made it in general, so we can use this in any question regardless of the center or the radius size. So I like to make in this problem is when you have the equation, make sure that the value after the negative sign, the minus sign, is the h, is the x coordinates of the center, and the value after this minus sign is your y coordinates of the center. So, for example, if I tell you x minus 2 squared plus y minus 7 squared equals, let's say, 16, you should be able to say the 2 comma 7 is my center because 2 is the number right after minus, 7 is the number right after minus. And the radius is going to be the square root of this number because the r squared has to be this number, so the radius will be 4. But if I want to make, let's say, this is y plus 7, then this is not going to be my center anymore because there is no minus sign right here, right? So I will make this y plus 7 as y plus 7 can be written as y plus 7 can be written as y minus 7. So now we have a negative in between. So which is in our equation, we have to have a negative sign, the subtraction sign. So which is that. So after that negative, we do have a -7, which means this is gonna be 2 comma -7 is my center if this was y plus 7. I hope that makes sense. And if you are not sure in general, so you can ask yourself what makes this parenthesis 0, which is 2, or what makes this parenthesis 0, which is -7. So those are going to be your x and y coordinates, basically. Okay, and that is the equation of the circle. I hope that makes sense. Let's try this in example. Okay, so let's do this problem now. So we are looking for the equation of a circle with diameter and has endpoints given, and we would like to find the equation. So this is not a straight like forward problem. It's kind of challenging, to be honest, especially if you're exploring the writing equation of the circle at the first time. So what we are given, like diameter, which we don't really know how this is going to look like on the coordinate plane, which I don't really care either. Let's say this is one endpoint. Let's say this is the another endpoint. So if that's the case, the right in the middle is going to be our center, and that is going to be radius. So let's say this is -5 and 2. Again, as you see, -5 is to the right, and then -1 is to the left, which doesn't matter for me because I didn't make this figure on the coordinate plane. So that's -4. And what we want is the equation of the circle that is actually passing through these 2 points as an endpoint of the diameter. Okay, so what we need is just the equation of the circle, which was something like this: x minus this, the x coordinates of the center, plus y minus y coordinates of the center to the second powers equals the square of the radius. So in order for us to write this, we do need the center point, which we do not know. We also need the radius. I need this, and I do need this as well. And I have none of these. So, but the good part is we may actually find those by using what we are given. So we are given the endpoint. You know, the center is just right in the middle of those A and B's, and meaning that the O is just the midpoint of A and B. If you do remember the midpoint formula, which is like the average basically of the coordinates, so you can take x1, x2 over 2, and y1, y2 over 2. Again, it looks complicated, but it's just the average of the coordinates. Like if you take the -1 as x and then -5 as x, you just combine those and then divide it by 2. And the same goes with the y, so -4 and 2 divided by 2. So that will give us the midpoint. So the midpoint would be -6 over 2, which is -3. And then that will give you -2 over 2, which is -1. So now we know the midpoint, which is this point. This is one way to get. And if you remember, I did the midpoint in different ways, especially if there's a scale, without using midpoint formula. But if you like to use that, go for it. But another way to look at it, you know, if you want to look at the change, the x value was -1. Now this is x equals -5. It just decreased by 4 when you move from A to B. So if you go halfway, that will decrease half much. So it just decreased by 4, so you will decrease by 2. If you decrease -1 by 2, you actually get -3. And that is the shortcut without really doing this. And the y value is -4, y value is +2. If you think about as y axis, the y value increased by 6 if you go from A to B. If you just take the half of that change, which is 3 units, if you increase -4 by 3, you do get -1, and we are done. So that is -3 and -1. That's my center. But the radius is also what I need. And to get the radius, I do need to know the distance between the center to this point or center to this point A, or I can find the distance between A to B and divide by 2. Let's go with that. So the distance between A, B Yeah, we can use the distance formula. Distance formula was telling us the difference of the x's to the second power and difference of the y's to the second power. And then this is under square root. And if you take the -1 and -5, so -1 minus -5, so keep those signs carefully. And we just take the difference of the x's. And then the y is -4 minus 2. So you are going to take the difference and square root it. So this is going to be a +5. So -1 plus 5 is 4. Square will be 16. And then that will be -6. If you square, you will get 36. And if you combine these, you get 52 under square root. So, but this is between A and B, which is the diameter. But what we want is the radius. So the radius should be just half of this number. So you can just say the radius is going to be square root of like 52 divided by 2. You can try plugging this in calculator, but we don't want to use it because we don't really need it. Because at the end, we just want to square this anyway, right? So the final part of the answer would be this. X minus h, h is -3, so I can say x, I should write in parentheses, x minus -3, right? But when you have two negatives, we don't want to write it, so we just make it +3. So, and then square that. That's the first part. And the y minus y value, so you know the y value of the center was -1. Y minus -1 is just +1, so we are going to make it +1 and to the second power. And then this is equal to the square of the radius. So we are gonna finish this problem by taking the square of this guy. So you will get the square of this number. So if I square this number, you know the square of the numerator, square root of square root, that's just like 52. But I do need to square this as well. So you will get 52 over 4. That's 26 over 2, which is just 13. So again, this is just the r squared because the equation was telling us this is the r squared. So we just have square root of 52 divided by 2 to the second power. If you square, you got 52 for numerator, you got 4 for denominator. 52 divided by 4 is just 13. That is my r squared. And I hope that makes sense. So this was our question for now. Okay, I'll see you in the next video.